M. The Media Project. Driven by data. Driven by technology. Driven by community development. Driven by the need to get results for your project. SM Graves Associates. Delivering real estate development to you, including project management and pre-development services with a keen focus on delivering community-oriented projects. We build profitable projects that respond to the needs of your neighborhood. Join the SMG family. Find us at smgravesassociates.com.
Hey, you are here for another SMGs Are We Here Yet podcast. I, of course, am your host, Scott M. Graves, and I'm excited for our guest this go-around. Our guest is Lilian Chen, and she is the founder of Proptimal, which is a real estate strategy firm, and we're going to get into the details of exactly where she positions herself into the industry. She currently teaches 300 plus people of high net worth on how to underwrite and structure deals. Lilian has guest lectured at Oxford. She serves as real estate co-chair and helped organize the largest student-led prop tech conference in London, the UK. And I'm very glad she came on an extremely high recommendation of another former guest, Matt Schneider of the show. Lilian, I'm excited to have you here. I hope you're having a great day.
Thank you so much, Scott. It's been a pleasure to be on here. And I love that you are, I think, one of the most thoughtful people in commercial real estate, where you're not just chasing deals blindly and talking about cap rates, but you're also thinking about the implications that our everyday decision is going to have on the society. So I'm very excited to dive into this and dissect all of the different issues that we care about at a much deeper level.
Well, I know. So first of all, thank you. And I know that I'm going to have a good episode, and I brought on a great guest. When we start talking, and then about 10 minutes into that conversation, we're like, oh man, you know what? We should probably hit record. Like, why didn't we do that 10 minutes ago, right? Because we started talking about a number of different things. Now, among others, what I found interesting is exactly where you're positioning yourself and why. Right. So we understand that you're data driven, but talk to the listeners about specifically what that means and where you're positioning, so how you're helping people.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with a quick introduction. I've been running Proptimal for about 5 years now. We have serviced over 200 customers and advised over $2 billion of real estate transactions. We have customers all the way from first-time investors, where I would walk them through the entire deal process. And we also have institutions with $1 billion under management, where I would develop proprietary financial models for them and tools. So as you can see it, we've gone through the whole range of asset classes and a lot of the deal types, and we've seen kind of people across the spectrum. And what struck me was that I came from an institutional background. I did finance, I did economics in college. I was a financial analyst as my first job. And when I started moving down into the smaller and medium-sized market, I realized that people didn't come with a financial background, right? Mm-hmm. Most of the real estate developers I know, they're just figuring things out along the way. And also, there's a lot of bad information online. So it's really hard for somebody without a finance background to understand what is good advice and what is bad advice. So for us, we're not just providing a service, but it's important for me to give people good advice, a lot of times anti-guru advice, to make sure that they are data-driven in a sense that they understand how the decisions they're making can impact their investment returns and how their companies do.
See, and that's what it is, right? When you first want to get in this game or any game with its basis in finance, and in our age, you go to the internet, everyone's going to go to the interwebs, right? And it's just the sheer amount of what's there is overwhelming. You don't know exactly where to focus. And so you're not focusing on those like 3 to 5 fundamental sort of facets of finance, right? That lead step to step. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, you got all these gimmicky kind of like deal analyzers and stuff like that. I don't mean to put anybody down. I'm just saying we all have these things that we put out on the internet in the first place, many of us, just so we can attract people to listen to what we have to say. But for the people that really just aren't in the know whatsoever, again, it's overwhelming, and you not all these deal analyzers really work correctly, or they might not be the right one you need for what you're trying to do. And in the end, I feel like a lot of people create very complex financial processes or financial models for themselves. And we've been saying for years in mentoring others, if you can't easily explain to me how cash flows in and out of your deal or in and out of your business, it's either a Ponzi scheme or you've spent way too much intellectual time creating something now that you can't explain. Why would I invest in something that you can't tell me what it is, right?
Absolutely. And you bring up a really good point, which is there's a lot of bad advice. Usually, those tend to do better with the SEO as well. So do you know what of the worst advice of real estate investing is?
What is it? I'm just interested to hear your perspective.
It is you should start investing in real estate so you can quit your 9-to-5 job, escape corporate life, and get passive income and become financially free. I think that's one of the biggest lies. All of the real estate developers I know are some of the hardest working, most burned out people I know.
Well, wait a minute now. That doesn't make us feel good. But
Work is working, right? Burned out, hopefully not. But a lot of times it struck me that people don't realize what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah. And I like the idea that not just from a work ethic standpoint, but just the idea that anything worth doing is going to take, I know this is overused now, but it is a good word for it. It takes intentionality, and it also takes passion, drive. Whether you're taking investor money or not, you still have plenty of people you need to convince that your idea is going to work and that it's a good idea. And you have to prove first to yourself that it's worth doing, right? That it has meaning.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, proving it to yourself, whether it has meaning or not, also is, I think, one of the areas where people don't realize, which is you go online, you find these influencers, and they all tell you that their investment strategy is going to be best or their market is going to be best. But people don't realize this thing in tech that we called founder problem fit, which is, does your investment strategy make sense for you? Right? And it's people would just go and say, well, I've been looking at this market because I heard from others that it's really rapidly growing and I want to be a part of that. And I just say, yeah, but you live 5-hour flight away, right? Like, why would you do that when you can start locally first and then build up that local advantage? Because ultimately, those are things that matter, not trying to ride a wave of a short-term trend.
Doesn't that also make sense? Because if we presuppose that there is no real estate market, in a country the size of the United States, there are tens of thousands of markets, right? And so I can understand that you might scale and you become national. You might be a developer who is truly on a national level, but it does kind of have to start with a local market, right? That you can garner a deep understanding for. This, I think, gets it. Is it fair to say, too, that what you're doing really is teaching people a set of skills that you hope they can replicate, right? So regardless of the market, they're the fundamental skills that allow them to have the financial acuity and then build their business strategy around those fundamental processes.
100%. So for us, we have been able to advise on deals across the entire nation because the way of thinking and underwriting a deal is pretty much the same, right? So we look at the same fundamental market drivers and we apply very similar strategies. And then my goal is to help people understand when you're looking at the deal, where are the strengths and where are the weaknesses, instead of just blindly following certain metrics, which people do, right? And so one of the examples would be people sometimes like to ask me, what is a good return? Right. So then that really depends because, well, what are you investing? Are you buying a Class A multifamily or are you trying to build a flex space ground up? And what people don't realize is when you're looking at returns, you can't just look at it on a standalone basis in a vacuum. You have to look at, okay, well, what am I benchmarking it to? What is the Fed funds rate? If I were to put money in the stock market, what would it get? Am I getting a significant premium over the stock market for me to be able to justify this? And also things like, okay, if I'm raising money from investors and I'm holding it over 5 years, how much am I actually getting paid, right? Like you can have a 22 IRR deal that pays you $100K over 5 years, which is practically not worth doing at all. Or you can have an 18% IRR deal that pays you $250K over 3 years. Now that's a different story. So people miss the questions that they should be asking because they're looking at the more obvious things. But what I'm really trying to do is get them to think on a deeper level to see if each of the deals makes sense.
And a lot of what you just said, inherent in that is good business mentorship, whether it's within the discipline of real estate or not, right?
Yeah.
You have to build your personal financial goals into your business from day one, right? No one ever does this. I shouldn't say no one because there are successful people. Yeah. Part of your success is financial. And notice I didn't say all of it, but part of it is financial. And that happens when you build yourself. I've talked to people over the years that just, oh yeah, but I mean, if I have to, I'm going to put all that money back into the business. Okay, great. So you're going to keep your job? Well, I can't do that and run this business. Okay, then what are you going to live on? Well, I've got about 6 months worth of, savings. Okay, this is why small businesses in the downtown always go out of business in 6 to 8 months, right? Mm-hmm. They had enough money to survive that long, but their break-even point, if they forecasted it out, is at 24 months. Yeah. So they went out of business in 8 months, right? Because they were undercapitalized. It's that kind of thing. There's a lot of what you just said. There's a lot of inherent in that is a lot of these fundamental things that we want people to do, regardless of what industry their entrepreneurship may unfold in, right?
It's context, right? What you're saying, all of it is context. And why context is so hard, I think, especially for beginners, is number one, you don't know what different options look like. So when I was starting this more now as a startup, we're pivoting into more of a tech-enabled service model. And I went to my mentors and I say, okay, how do I turn this into $1 billion unicorn? Which is the goal of pretty much every startup, because that's the only reason that you would be worth funding if you were going to do a startup, right?
That's sad, by the way, but I'm not disagreeing with you in tech.
Yes, and I agree, right? So then now he asks me, and I have fantastic mentors. He asks me, why do you want to be $1 billion company? What if you just bootstrapped and you exit and you get $5 million? That's going to set your life on a completely different trajectory than where you are now. And that's going to make sure that at $5 million, most of your money problems would be taken care of. And most of the things that you could ever want materially, you would have.
Well, you'd be buying yourself some serious, let's take a deep breath and truly think about what my next move is. And I don't have to do anything until right?
Peace, right? Peace and options. So I think people often miss these bigger philosophical questions, if you will, because there's simply not people on the other side who are reaching out to them and saying, your additional 500 million in exit value isn't going to bring you that much happiness.
Yeah. So you're a person giving a great example of having been guided, and you are a person who is guiding others. What do you think about the notion that it's easier to give advice to others than it is to take your own advice? Have you?
Oh yeah, it's hard. You know what? I think I love giving advice for two reasons. The first is I get to have the opportunity to pay it forward. And that's the only reason that I feel somewhat, deserving of all these people who have spent all this time helping me, so that I can pay it back and return that favor by benefiting somebody else. And that's a beautiful, beautiful feeling. The second is it also reminds me that I need to follow my own advice as well.
Back in the day when I was in the music business, a mentor and teacher I had, who had been with the big bands for decades and was leading the Benny Goodman Orchestra at the time, said, you're going to teach. And I was like, man, I don't want to teach. I want to play. He's like, no. Everyone who plays, who's somebody, teaches, because you got to be constantly on a daily basis. You got to be reminding yourself how to do this, and you got to be reminding yourself why you do this. And you will do that, experiencing this, the joy of this with everybody all day, every day. So you're going to do it. It was like a requirement, So that really, I get it, Do you come, by the way, from a background of like teachers and stuff? Yeah, I feel like I sense.
Yeah.
You got that pure. You got educator.
I feel like you've got psychic abilities. Both of my parents are classically trained musicians turned professors.
Nice. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. You hit the nail right in the head.
What do they play?
Both pianists.
Very cool. So they got like the whole realm, the whole spectrum of both harmony and melody at their fingertips.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think, interestingly, both of my parents being musicians and me not capitalizing on my musical talent, apparently, ended up expressing my creative needs in other ways. And that's building a startup, right? Everything from designing the product, how it looks, to understanding what I want to say to express myself on social media, all of that feels like a creative art form for me. And I know you have strong views on how art has been commoditized and whatnot. But to that, I would say, I think in this day and age, I wouldn't say all art has been commoditized. I think traditional art has been commoditized, but then it starts to manifest in other forms. So for example, the Gen Zs who are starting their TikTok account and creating videos and voicing their opinions and creating skits. Those are all forms of art that traditionally wouldn't have been considered as proper art.
That's true. If you define art as a human language it's a language of expression.
Yeah.
Also a need, right? Like inherently creativity is something that we absolutely need. When we deny ourselves entirely some sort of creative outlet, and we do so for a long period of time, for one, you might argue we become impossible to deal with, everybody.
We become depressed.
Right? Like because like who wants to be around somebody who's that, inhibited? And it's not what it is, right? It's not the end product. The end product is what everybody else sees. But the most important thing is that whoever you are, have the opportunity to go through that process, because it's that process that you need. You need that. It's another form of expression that is very important to the human experience,
Yeah. And so is real estate, right?
This is at the apex of our needs, right? I mean,
yeah.
We create instability in housing, right? In any way, it has dire social consequences, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is why so many people love real estate, is because your artistic vision, a lot of the times, right? The doodle that people draw on the back of the napkin end up getting built.
With fast-moving and sweeping changes to our economy in the works, we all need to reconsider how our investments are best placed. At Partners in Housing, we believe your money is best placed locally. Utilized to increase value and provide stable and desirable housing to your neighbors. Contact Partners in Housing to find out how you can participate in local housing opportunities by joining the Partners in Housing Fund. Look us up at partnersinhousingvt.com or email us at partnersinhousingvt@gmail.com.
And that was so crazy. I was at my first job. I was an analyst 2 years in, and we were trying to underwrite this deal and design this beer garden that was going to be the interim use for this, institutional multifamily project. And so we would decide to turn the parking lot into a beer garden. And I was looking up images online and I wanted to have the containers and whatnot. So I started drawing out the different containers and how they were going to stack up. I handed it over. The guy who was the head of the development looked at it and goes, "Great, let's build it." So, wait, what? And he was like, "Yeah, we'll send it to the architect. They're going to build it." So that was so crazy to me. Me being a 24-year-old, working at a company, drawing out something, and then it thinking, I don't know if it actually got built or not, but the potential of it just getting it built over time, that's crazy, right? Like real estate, you need to really care about your impact on the world because you're literally building the world. It's not just about money. It's not just about making an investment.
It's so true, right? Like everything you see is a series of decisions. Everything around us as human beings. You can't help it. You look around, you're like, man, every single one of these things was a decision. It was an idea.
The doodle. Yeah.
So it was the doodle. I love that idea, because it totally, that's 9 times out of 10, that's how it starts, which is in and of itself, it's just that idea is just fascinating, to think about. So where, I know that you're not providing advice in the sense of, like I do analysis and then I tell people, I love earlier you said, something that you use guru in the term that you used, right? You know what I mean? Which is which is like brother to, gimmick, right? Like gotta get rid of that stuff, right? So I don't want to attack my next question from that same standpoint. We have, what do you think is interesting that's coming up and under what time frame? I mean, it seems to me this is pretty fascinating. There's been this convergence. We've seen a convergence of deal structures simplifying, return still good in places where, where we're building what is needed, right? Which makes sense, right? We're responding to the marketplace, but also despite all that's going on socially and politically in the world, we're starting to see, I can't remember a time before this ever in my adult life where more people, not just within the industry, I'm talking about more citizens, are more focused and many times in the right ways on housing. Mm-hmm. Right. And people really want to do something about it. They want to invest. They want to. So I'm just wondering what you're seeing in your world.
What do you want to talk about first? Do you want to talk about AI first or housing first or housing, commercial real estate?
You're our guest.
Just can get into.
You're our guest. You prioritize what you think is probably perhaps most important.
Okay. Sounds good. Should we talk about AI first?
Sure.
All right. So for background, as we're speaking, Proptimal is also building the 10X Real Estate Analyst, which is designed to automate a lot of the works that we did as financial analysts and allow anyone to build financial models without writing a single formula. So the background story to that is I was an analyst and I spent the first year just breaking financial models and checking formulas and doing all of that stuff where I really wished I could have done more strategic work. And so that way, when we have this technology, then it allows the small, medium-sized real estate developers without a finance degree to be able to model whatever they want and not waste their time battling spreadsheets and instead spend their time thinking about the deal and building relationships. Right. So needless to say, I say this to prove that I've been in the tech space for let's say the past year or two now, I've been researching a lot and doing a lot of experiments, within our own company. And one of the things that I think is going to become more true is it's going to be harder for people to get into real estate if they're new and if they don't use AI. Now we have to think about this, right? The sensational topic would be to say AI is going to replace your jobs, or the people who are using AI is going to replace all the people who are not using AI. That's not entirely true. Right? Because in real estate, the most important thing that you can have is relationships. So what I found is that the people who are already industry veterans, who already have solid deal flow and track records, they're going to continue to excel because it doesn't matter if they're using AI or not. If you're looking at a guy, right, who uses AI but's only done one deal so far, and if you're looking at another guy who is an industry veteran who's been doing this for the past 20 years, who has all the relationships and who has, 10 deals that all generated very solid returns, you're going to go with the second guy.
You're going to place money, as an example. If I'm an investor, you're going to place money with somebody who can prove out, hey, here's the pathway your money can take, and here's the expected return. And by the way, we all have a track record, right? And you say, okay, reduced risk, right? Or just competency. Maybe you're a positive thinker. It's competency, right?
Correct. So using AI, in my opinion, has very little value add to your investors, and it has a lot more value add to yourself, right? So what AI does is it buys you time and it buys you sanity, only if you use it correctly. So then now let's look at the newer investors. So now let's say you have investor. So investor A was the guy with one deal and not, he's using AI. Right now, let's say you have another newbie investor who's coming in, who's not using AI. Yeah, obviously you're going to get beaten by the first guy, because the first guy is doing everything that he can to learn as quickly as he can. So he gets to a point where he can have the established track records and have the data and have the relationships, right? But also here's another thing that I notice is the way that I think about it is there's two different types of roles that technology can play. Either it's going to be a qualifier or it's going to be a maximizer. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're trying to get a job, right? Your resume is a qualifier, which means you need it to be good enough. But if it's 10 times better than the other person's, it's only like the function is just to get you in the door, right? Like even if your resume is 10 times better, you're not going to get hired just because your resume is so good. Now, what's a maximizer would be something like if you are incredibly emotionally intelligent, whereas the other person is not, yeah, being 10 times more emotionally sophisticated is going to get you that role, right? So I think people understand it in the mistake is that people think that by using AI, they're going to get 10 times better. But I would say, unless you have enough scale and track record already, scaling something doesn't work, because that's like saying, okay, well, I have really bad experience, but I'm just going to use AI to apply to as many jobs as possible. And then you're still not going to get it through the interview.
Yeah, I was going to say like garbage in, garbage out, right? AI more complex and faster at what it does with information that is put into it, but it's still, we're putting information, particularly where we talk about the difference between AGI and large language models, right? Large language models are quite unsophisticated and really are just larger and faster repositories of information that make it over time seem like, oh, that's really intelligent the way it's telling me these things. Well, it's really listing out everything we put into it, and we happen to be able to put billions of items into it as opposed to a few million, which like, but so I'm hearing everything you're saying, and I'm saying that, right, we still need to have good fundamentals. We still need to desire to acquire experience and knowledge and bring that to the table, because, your foot in the door is one thing, but then you have to build a track record, and exactly what it is. It's building your track record, right?
Yeah, and becoming competent and becoming knowledgeable. So the big question that I often ask people is, why are you focused on panic buying as many AI tools as possible, storing all these subscription and paying them monthly, when what AI really does, it has opened up the entire internet's knowledge, and it's now accessible within seconds at your fingertips, right? Like the scale of what AI can actually do for you versus what people are doing it is so different. And people are focused on, which subscription should I sign up for? It's like, yeah, you can learn about literally anything now.
Right.
And you're not thinking about it, right? You're not thinking about, how do I become smarter?
And do you find it's like, because I'm seeing there are some people who are breaking away really fast because they're focused on how to ask.
Yeah.
It doesn't even matter what the platform is. Like I've got a few friends in business they're really focused on getting good at asking the right questions of the and they're getting the highest grade information as a result. So, and frankly, I spend next to nothing for platforms. I don't care. I mean, you do a Google search now, it's assisted by artificial intelligence, right? So the question is, do you know how to ask the right questions, right? I think, and things will get more sophisticated as we move forward. But right now, I think focus on that as far as your interaction with artificial intelligence. But I'm wondering what you might think about the best, sort of like the way we should be interacting with this tech.
That is really hard. I feel very pessimistic because honestly, I think it's going to make the majority of people lazier and therefore dumber. And dumber not in terms of intelligence, but just the quality of questions that they're asking.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy now where we can get anything immediately. And the less effortful thing is to just not challenge it, especially if you're tired, especially if you file a long day of work, especially if your kid is begging for your attention, right? It's easier to just say, okay, sure. What I found to be really helpful is ask the AI whatever questions you want. And then in the beginning of the prompt, what I like to do is ask me one question at a time to understand what my needs are. So then AI is going to start a conversation with you, and it's going to ask you about your different goals. And through that process, it can be extremely enlightening because you're starting to ask yourself, is this what I really wanted? And if so, what kind of format and output would I want it to? And then at the end, when you get the results, you also want to think about things as, okay, have I missed anything? And if you feel like you've already covered everything, then you can give it some feedback and then ask GPT again and say, is there anything that I missed that I should also think about? Right? Because now, and the word here is to say critically. If you use critically in your prompts are going to get so much better.
Interesting. By literally using the word critically.
Critically, right? So this is what I want to build for my next real estate project. Analyze it critically and provide me the pros and cons of why I should or should not do this deal.
And you will get a better result.
You'll get a much better result.
Now I'm going to sound like an old guy from it, but I hear these things and I'm not at all disagreeing with you. It just makes me, I think you'll probably agree with me. It just makes me be like, you just read books, just please write poetry. Like all these things that like really force our mind in a good way. Like I shouldn't say force, that's the wrong word, but like just the stuff that truly turns you, makes you maniacal intellectually. Like I can't stop until I understand this better. I can't stop until I get to the right.
Yes.
Well, and I think I just get scared sometimes, and I'm not ever one to say we shouldn't use a technology, right? It's just we should not unleash it on the world until we know what we want to get out of it. And in this case, like, we should be careful to tell people, young and old alike, you still got to be intellectually rigorous.
Yeah. If it makes you feel better, I've found GPT to be one of the biggest sources of my intellectual inspiration over the past year or two.
Interesting.
And I'm somewhat ashamed to say this, but also kind of proud, which is there were many days where I found myself talking to GPT more than I talk to humans, at least in the early days of product development, right? Because I did come from a tech background. I was from Silicon Valley. And then now I was faced with a learning curve of how do I learn everything about technology as quickly as possible? And then what is the right thing to build? What is the right business model to have? And I have so many different things I need to learn within a very short period of time. And the fact that it allowed me to go from zero technology background into building my first prototype with no code tools into now, actually understanding the different code and why we choose different tech stack and which tools to use and not use. That would have not been possible if I were doing it by myself and using, books, right? Because the thing is that it was so tailored into what specifically I needed, and it understood all of the context of what I wanted. Now, there's another way that you can do it is I could have hired coaches, I could have hired consultants, but that would have costed me so much more money.
The accessibility especially for younger folks, right, or new people, is that's the thing. What you're describing sounds like a lot of what my friends who are strong advocates of artificial general intelligence, that's the value, right? To get away from large language models it's essentially creating a HAL, 2001: A Space Odyssey, right? That every person has a bot, right, that's helping accelerate their whatever their intellectual pursuit is, right? And so there's some amount of one having to learn how to best interact with the bot, but rather than the whole thing generally being an extractive process, it's more about the bot gets to know you better. You get a bit better at asking the questions, but then it's helping you. Particularly, I think it's from a pragmatic standpoint, it's wonderful if a lot of the mundane work goes away, right? Because the bot can do that. But and then additionally, to your point, it's refining that information, right? So it's getting more to the heart of just what you need to know, which is a theme, by the way, that you've exemplified multiple times in our conversation. This idea that it's not just about right or wrong information, or even good or bad information, right? But it's about getting to just the right combination of information that one needs at one given time. That's the secret, right? Am I right in saying that? Or
yeah, just the right combination and right context. And as you're speaking, it gave me a analogy of what people have been doing with AI, which is effectively when you start using AI, you have just hired the smartest person that you have ever hired. Now, there are two different things that you can do with this incredibly smart human. First is you can treat it like an employee and just tell it to do things and get upset if it doesn't do it exactly the way that you want it to. Or you can ask it to be a contributor to your team and challenge you and propose ways on how to grow your business. So unless you have I'm not sure if humility is the right word for this, or maybe awareness or self-reflection. You need to have these traits to be able to invite somebody else, AI or human, to criticize how you're currently doing things. And that's harder to do because we can't teach people how to be self-aware, to be humble, to be inquisitive. And we definitely can't teach people how to think. That's the hard part.
I think your word humility strikes the right chord in this case, right? Because humility, another step beyond humility is that openness. It ceases then the feedback ceases to be criticism. It is simply feedback. It's the feedback that's going to make me better. It's the feedback that's going to make this better, right?
Yeah, exactly.
This has been a fascinating conversation, and I think we'll leave it with the AI. We don't have to go beyond that. I'm not for guru predictions because that's not what you're about.
It doesn't matter, right? Gurus can say whatever they want, but you have to figure out what's right for you.
You've heard it here from Lily Chen, ladies and gentlemen. You need to have your solid set of fundamentals in play. You need to think about why it is that you're doing what you're doing. And then you need to understand the processes, including and especially the financial processes that get you to the right deal that's going to work for you. And then the next step, of course, is to be able to replicate that. I think this is to me, this sounds like solid advice. This is the kind of advice that's empowering. You take it, you use it. If you're doing it right, it feels good. You do it again.
Yeah,
Repeat,
exactly.
right? Not a gimmick, right? That doesn't really work. And even if it did work, it's probably by accident.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the difference between going for the diet pill versus just eating less, exercising, and eating better foods and sleeping well, right? So it's not sexy. And what the most successful real estate developers I've come across, none of what they do is sexy. Right? They've just gotten better at what they do by doing the same thing over and over and staying in the same markets for long enough. They understand the markets in and out and all of the people that are involved in it and just lasting.
Yeah, it's funny. I was listening to, of all things, a podcast earlier today, and it's probably about the sixth time or so in the last month where I've heard whether we're talking about value add models or people that are working in multifamily new build. Everyone's talking about the idea that, well, since money is tighter in all but say the poorest of markets, so we're actually in a very underprivileged market here in central Vermont. And so a lot of the old, B quadruple R model kind of still works here in tighter markets, right? It doesn't work so much, but you offset that by holding on to more, value in the property and for longer. And it struck me after hearing this about the sixth time, it's called real estate investing. You know what I mean, though? I mean, I'm not trying to sound like a jerk. I'm saying it's delayed gratification. Like when money isn't so easily,
Accessible.
low, it's in financing is tighter, all that, you have to make choices. And sometimes that's the delayed gratification. Sometimes it's not even really all that bad. It's just, we're going to keep more money in a project longer because it's of course accruing in value. Like how much value do you need to get out so fast? And so it seems like what the advice you're giving, it doesn't matter if it's a fast or a slow market. It's just, this is what you do, right? If this is a lifelong discipline you want to be a part of, if it's a community you want to be a part of, and you want to last a long time, this is how you do it.
Yeah, it's evergreen. The good principles don't change over time.
I love it. Lily Chen is founder of Proptimal. Thank you for coming on our show. I hope that maybe we could have you back sometime in the future, and we'll talk about all the things we didn't get to this time around.
I would love to. I know there's a lot of things and we could probably go on forever and ever. So I would definitely look forward to being back. And I hope that everything that I've shared so far has been at least somewhat helpful to people. And if you're feeling like you're being left behind by not adopting AI quickly enough, don't stress. You're fine. You're doing just great.
SMG's Are We Here Yet podcast is a production of M the Media Project and SM Graves Associates. Learn more at smgravesassociates.com.